Board of Commissioners and Civil Service Commission is called to order. City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Mayor Hendricks?
Here.
Vice Mayor Andrews?
Here.
Commissioner Price? Here. Commissioner Hodges?
Here.
Commissioner Douthras? I haven't heard. Is Douthras here?
He didn't call it.
He did not?
He did not.
Okay, let the record show that Commissioner Douthras is not here. Chairperson Grace Critelli? I'm sorry.
Can you hear me? Okay, I'm present.
Okay, Robert Preston? Here. Mike? Caballero, thank you. And, I'm sorry, Andrew Tilka? No. Paul Tilka? Okay.
A name that the deputy did not call?
Oh, Linda Hine. Let the record show that Linda Hine's not here.
Okay, during this meeting today, we're going to hold public comment until the items that we address, and then if you'll raise your hand if you have public comment, you can come up to the podium to discuss it with the commission or point out your concerns to the commission so that we can take them under advisement at that time. Topics for discussion, we will start off with items of concern, which is the time clocks. So the floor is open towards discussing time clocks in the city for all city employees.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I think this has been an issue for the benefit of the Civil Service Board that the Commission has discussed. You know, we're going through our budget process currently, and we want to tighten up on the time clock issue. We're looking at the technology of biometrics, so where you can clock in with a fingerprint. We were trying to implement a situation when you clock in with your card, but again, we're trying to make sure that we're getting accurate records and accurate information. And a lot of this is not that the employees would be doing something nefarious, but we believe in keeping honest people honest. And if we set the protocols in there, so I think implementing that system and getting your feedback is kind of I don't want to speak for the commission, you all are here, but just I think that's kind of an important issue that we want to implement, and we're moving towards that direction.
So do we have money in this budget for this year to automate all of that so that we've got a time clock system for everyone? I know part of that has been implemented.
Right. Karen has been working with another vendor, and if you want to come up to the microphone, Karen. And I think the hopes are that we can implement this technology at the same time.
Okay. So with the time clock situation, our current paychecks system, we were trying to implement automated time clocks with them, and we started last year with them. We do our payroll through them, and then they could do the time clocks where they could check our time and attendance. Well, the software they tried to sell us, which we had approved in the budget last year. My glasses are fogging up. The software didn't talk to each other. It was, I think, from what I understand, it's such a big system that they have all these different modules, and time and attendance wasn't talking to payroll, so it wasn't working for me. And so I went out and I got quotes from 3 different vendors, and we have the budget of $26,000 for this software, which was approved last year. $15,000 was already in there for paychecks, and then another $11,000 for the time and attendance and the HR software. I'm sorry, I get nervous up here. So So I got some quotes from 3 vendors, and they're all very, very similar. They can either do the time clock on your telephone or on your cell phone, where you clock in on your phone, and there's geofencing, meaning that you have to be within a certain distance to the building to clock in, so you can't be in a different state or anything. They have, I'm sorry, I just get nervous up here. I think go back to my office. So they have facial recognition, they have the time, you can punch in your employee number. So anyhow, the software, I guess we just need to get your approval that we can move forward with whichever company we decide to go with. And I really like Paycom, number one, because they can provide us all the automating for our onboarding and our time and attendance and our payroll and benefits, and they have personal service where they can actually come here to the building and train each one of our employees on it. And they're here, that's the one reason I like them the most, is because they can service us here in the building anytime we have any questions. The other softwares like Zenefits, Paycor, Paylocity, none of them have representatives who can come here to the city. It's always, you're gonna have to call and you're gonna have to, find a representative to answer questions and things like that. So, what I'd really like to do, I was hoping to get the time clock situation set up for the beginning of the first of October for the next fiscal year. And so I think I just need your approval to go ahead and make that change.
And what kind of recognition does that system have? Is it fingerprint, or is it?
They have all sorts. You can choose which you want. You can have a tablet, at the entrance of the door where someone comes in and they punch in their employee number. They can do the biometrics if you want. I think there's a little cost to the biometrics, but it's not that much. I just was concerned about.
Telephones have it now. I would think that's.
What's that?
I say if telephones have that now, it's probably.
Yeah, and the only thing I didn't like about biometrics is just with the COVID virus, everybody having to touch a pad, so that was the only thing I just really didn't care for. Or
face recognition.
Yeah, it does
I would like to see us do something.
Yep.
Not with a cell phone or something.
Paycom software does all that, and they can do the facial recognition where if you're clocking in on your phone or the tablet, it can see that it's you. It takes a snapshot of your picture so that it's you clocking in and out.
I think the problem we have with that technology, though, if I may, Karen, then everybody's got to have, a smartphone, and, we have employees that don't have that. So I think the biometrics, even though it might be a little bit more cumbersome right at the beginning, and we can have a protocol where we wipe the little scanner clean,
yeah.
When they put their finger in. So, that's not an issue. We can, obviously be clean, but I think that's the safest way of moving along. If we start adding other components, and it just, there's room for not having accurate information.
Yeah.
And
my phone doesn't work or whatever, and facial recognition at the time clock itself, that's acceptable to me. I don't know about the.
And the other option we have is the swipe card, the proxy cards, where the ones that let us in the doorway, they can also be used as a time punch, so you can swipe them against the tablets.
So is that in your budget?
Yes, it is.
For this year? Okay.
I have a question. How many, do all city employees come to City Hall first?
No.
So the marina has its own, will have its own time recognition?
Yep. Yeah.
And then everywhere that people.
I had planned for 5, because there's kind of 5 locations.
Okay.
So I planned for 5 different clocks at the different locations.
So do all our employees have to meet in the morning or whenever their shift begins at a building?
Yeah.
Does anyone start work from their own home, for instance? Okay.
Any other questions on this?
Well, I think we need to look at the different systems and get the prices and complete with installation and make sure that it talks to our payroll, because we can cut out a lot of work if we don't have to have people manually doing things to time.
Karen, you gotta come over by the way.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
Yeah, Karen, if you will, too, be sure you lean into that mic, so it's...
Okay, I have the 3 plans, quotes, and I can put them all together in a spreadsheet for you, so you can see the differences and the prices. They're all very, very similar.
I think the only problem we have, which we still have to work out with Paycom, is their security protocol for their information. So,
Yeah,
you know, but we're working on that.
yeah, I'm checking that and the references too.
So this will tally up the hours, and can it go all the way to payroll from these programs?
Yes.
And can we go to, will there be any cost savings on going to a biweekly rather than a weekly?
Absolutely.
Are we biweekly? Okay, good enough.
Yeah.
And if I could add one more thing, as long as we have provisions in our handbook that allows salaried employees to get overtime, my preference would be that every single employee, every single person that gets a paycheck from this city must clock in and clock out from the top down. I mean, I want to know how much time certain salaried employees spend at City Hall, for instance. We had that issue with Walt putting in his own overtime for the emergency thing, right? And I want to see that. If we're going to hold our hourly employees' feet to the fire with the time clock, I want all, even salaried employees, especially since we have a provision in our handbook where salaried employees get overtime. Okay?
I support that, but I also support removing that provision because I don't believe salary employees should get overtime.
I just think it shows leadership from the top down if everybody clocks in, everybody. Okay.
I mean, it's a great idea, except for the fact you're opening up Pandora's box. I mean, there's department heads here that work 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
And you're going to talk about redoing the budget then, and we're going to be talking about a lot of different things. And the reason why I got on Walter for clocking in for overtime, because it's an unwritten rule. Maybe, I don't know how it ever got in the handbook, because nobody ever brought it up before.
Yeah.
Never saw anybody do that before. So as it turns around, if we do continue to move forward, and that's one of the things I do want to talk about today is the overtime for salaried employees. We are opening up Pandora's box, and it is going to do damage to the budget, major damage.
I think we're all agreed that's going to go away, but.
Yeah, that, to me, that needs to be stricken.
Could I explain? The reason that was put into the handbook originally was after Irma. Irma was quite a big storm that came here a few years ago, and we were working out of the fire station, and all of the staff were working lots of extra hours. And we had found out through FEMA that salaried employees can get overtime if there's a policy for it. And so then you can turn it into FEMA to get a reimbursement for it. And so because of Irma, our previous city manager felt like, well, this would be, you know, we can get the money back anyway, so they're working all these extra hours, let's go ahead and adopt that policy. And that's how it ended up in the handbook. Doesn't have to be there, but it is because of FEMA that it's in there.
So did we in fact get a check from FEMA?
We didn't get a check for FEMA for Irma because we didn't have it in our policy. But if going forward, for instance, with this one that we just had, that was why it was okay to go ahead and do the overtime, because it was in the policy. And then, I can't read this thing. The reimbursement that I supplemented or submitted to FEMA is included in there, but we, haven't heard back on that yet.
And therein lies the problem.
Well, FEMA takes a long time. It took us 2 years to get money back from FEMA for Irma.
Yeah.
And so I've submitted reimbursement with FEMA, and for about $90,000, all the extra time and supplies that we had to buy. And it just takes time now for them to make a determination what they're going to give us back.
If I may, and Rob, I don't know if you can enlighten us a little bit on the difference between exempt and non-exempt employees. are we getting ourselves into a classification problem if we start tracking hourly time, or because I have no problem doing that. I just want to make sure we're not going to have.
You mean the idea of directors clocking in every day, or
Yes.
the emergency pay stuff?
No, the director's clocking in every day.
No, the only time you start to run into a problem is if you somehow tie that to their compensation. But if all you're doing is tracking when they work for accountability purposes, that's fine. Understand that one of the side things that you may get, we are in a political environment, this is a governmental entity, and so let's say next election cycle, a candidate says, I want a public records request of all of the hours of all of the directors. You're going to need to maintain those records and be able to produce them, you know, but just in terms of the Fair Labor Standards Act, there's no issue there.
Okay, good. The only thing, just again, you know, I ended my day yesterday probably about 6 o'clock because I went through Crystal Island and everything. So if I have to come back here to clock out at the end of my day, it gets a little cumbersome. So obviously there's going to be some leeway there. You know, I think all of you know what I do before and after work, but if there's ever a question, I guess I can keep a log for you or whatever.
Well, you do have breakfast with Bob. I don't know if that's should be included or not. You are getting a free breakfast.
I think you've seen me at those. I hardly get a chance to eat anything.
So, well, I agree with all that. I agree with taking that out for being paid overtime to our salaried people. So I think that needs to be stricken also.
And also, you know, there's some tasks that I do that could cause me to work 90 hours. I would like to at least be able to take off on Friday or something if I get those hours in. You know, I'm about half dead by that time. I'm not getting overtime, but I do put in all that time. And I know it's mentioned in a recent commission meeting, if we're, you know, staying after hours in 10 o'clock meetings or whatever, and we just come in at noon or whatever, sometimes our body needs that rest.
As long as your work is done, fine with me,
Thank you. Appreciate that.
you know?
Appreciate that.
And that's what a salary employee,
And there's also times where I have to take it home and actually work on a Saturday to keep from having to be here. Personally in the office on Saturday, depending on, like, if I'm working on charter amendments or something like that, and then we got a deadline for the agenda, trying to get it out and everything. So it all depends. Of course, I won't be up here to be able to clock in or whatever, but I do keep track of my time for accountability purposes, because I do turn in a timesheet that actually shows my time worked, whether it's at, you know, taking 4 hours on a Saturday to catch something up, or it requires that additional time to meet that deadline of the agenda to get it out in time or whatever. But I turn it in for accountability purposes, but I'm not always around a time clock to be able to punch in.
Yeah, I think we all know how hard you've worked, Clara. We appreciate it. We want you to know that you're appreciated.
I do make mistakes just like everybody.
Yes, sir, Bob.
Robert Preston, 425.
I don't think you need to do that, Bob, not amongst the commission and both.
Okay, I agree with striking the overtime for the salaried employees, but I also agree with keeping track of how many hours they work for the city, so I'm in favor of the comp time, and what Clara's talking about is comp time. And I don't know how legally that works with salaried employees. I think it's probably pretty fair. You couldn't do that with the hourly employees. So I think that's really a way to go. And when you mentioned masks, the problem is that I think COVID-19 is going to be around for a while. So people are touching their face, touching their mask, and it's visual recognition and stuff like that. I think we need to stick to fingerprints or something like that.
Well, the only thing is, if you're standing at a time clock with nobody else around. You can pull your mask off for facial recognition. I don't think that's an issue, but I like the fingerprint idea, but I don't like the idea of everybody touching the pad unless we're sure we can keep it sanitary.
Okay. As far as the comp time, is there any legal ramifications for that, please?
Well, there's a difference between comp time and I think what the clerk was referring to as flex time. Comp time is something that is really only relevant to hourly employees, where if the hourly employee, and really hourly isn't the right term, it's non-exempt employees that aren't exempt from the Fair Labor Standards Act, who are required to get overtime. And so the regulations allow government entities, if you get to a point where you're at 40 hours and you don't want to pay them overtime, but you need them to put in another 3 hours or whatever to get this water main repaired, then they get comp time, and it gets booked on the record for them to then use down the road. So you're not paying them overtime, but they will ultimately be compensated because they're required to. Flex time is salaried employee, like the clerk, pulls an all-nighter, because there's 50 million things on the agenda. She gets to sleep in till noon the next day because she's a salaried professional that's, exempt from overtime. That's something more subject to the city manager overseeing his executive team to, as the commissioner said, as long as you get your work done kind of thing, and so there's more flexibility there. But generally speaking, professional, salaried, exempt, FLSA exempt employees don't get comp time.
Flex time, yeah. And I agree with that. That's 100% correct.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to talk over you, Bob. I don't want to see salaried employees thinking because they spend an extra couple of hours working on something, it's hour for hour, and I certainly understand if Clara's working till 10 or 11 o'clock at night and needs to sleep in just to recover. I don't see anybody complaining about that at all. Or if she's working on a Saturday and she sleeps in on Monday just to catch up, but I don't see that being an hour for hour basis because you're going to end up with people. She puts in an 80-hour week. Is she not going to show up the next week? I guess that's what I'm getting at. So.
If I can, I know we are going to go through the handbook, and if you look on page 19 of our handbook, there is a section in there called flex time for salaried employees. So I think as we go along and we're trying to make decisions about changing the handbook or adding to it, we could do that as we go through it.
Okay.
Karen, I have a question. I know a lot of people will be taking time to do this themselves, to put in their time. If there's someone who's on vacation, leave of absence, out for any type of bereavement, is this something that you yourself would have to do?
I'm sorry, I can't hardly understand.
Okay. If you had someone who's going to be taking like a leave of absence from work, whether it be bereavement or anything else like that, would you be the person that put that information in? Or is this something that they would have to do individually?
Do you mean as far as their time clock or
yes.
punching in? Well, communication's the key. If someone has to leave for bereavement leave, they would, tell their department head. And usually department heads are the ones in charge of approving their time. So, through that chain, ultimately in the end, I would be the one making sure that it's in the system so they get paid correctly. But it's up to the managers, the directors, to make sure that their employees are keeping track of their time correctly and getting time approved off. We have some rules about overtime. It's supposed to be pre-approved. You're not supposed to just be able to get overtime, but a lot of times you can't approve overtime. You just have to go ahead and do it and get it approved later. There's just times like that. But it's all communication, really. because there wouldn't be any way for someone, if they're on bereavement, to clock in or clock out, you know, from a different area. So a lot of times it's communication. We do have like forms for sick leave, annual leave, floating holidays, to get those things pre-approved time off. And they turn them in to me, and then I keep them in a file until that payroll.
Karen, if we're going electronically with
Yeah.
the system, I think how it works is electronically it goes to the supervisor.
Yep.
They approve it or make whatever modifications if the person's gone on maybe they're sick, or maybe, like you said, bereavement, whatever it is, the supervisor's empowered to make those modifications to that record.
Yeah.
And then it should go electronically to you and then to Paycom, where they process the actual payroll. I think the process, we're trying to get away from paper.
Yep.
You know, because not only do we have a storage problem, then we got to scan it and everything else. So if Paycom isn't that system, then maybe we just need to clarify that. 'Cause
Yeah, that,
it's all
Paycom is an electronic system where, he's exactly right. Everything would be put into the system, the city, or their director would approve it, and then it would come through to me for a final, you know, to submit it. And I think it holds everybody accountable too. You know, it might be a little more work for the directors, because they have to go in there and they have to, you know, it probably shouldn't be, because paper takes a lot more time to approve things, and there's a lot more room for error with the paper. So I'm really looking forward to automating all of the payroll.
I know the time clocks. The time clocks, they have their own gear up as to what they're doing and what they're looking for and everything. Let's say, do you have a form that they have to fill out first before it's put into the time clock?
Employees?
Yes.
Right now, we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you have something like that with the time clocks, so you can keep it in track in their folder, that they've asked for this time already?
Oh, if they wanted to, you know, have some time off, and we wouldn't need to. You know, I don't see, if they request it through the system and their manager approves it, that's all you need.
Theoretically, it's like, if I wanted to take tomorrow off, and you were my supervisor, I would send you an email, but it's not an email, it's within the electronic system itself, and it would send a notice to you that I made a request for a day off, and then you have to approve it before I can take the day off. So, you know, obviously there's going to be communication. We're not that big of an organization between me and you, and our supervisors and our employees. So that communication would be there to get the approval, but then it's just a matter of filing this electronic form that's part of the whole overall system. It's not like a separate document, but it's all part of the electronic system. So it's just, you know, it's just a better way of keeping track. Now, the time clocks themselves, where they come into play, is, say we use the biometrics, they come in and put their finger in the slot, that automatically registers in the software, because it's connected to the software, that I clocked in at 10:28, say, if we were clocking in right now. And so it would take the date and the time and then automatically calculate at the end of the day, when I clock out, I got to put my finger back in, and it clocks me out, and it'll calculate the amount of time that I was here at work, is how the system would work. Thank you.
Mayor, just if I could, since we are not yet, haven't picked the vendor or whatnot, and you may already be considering this, but I went through this with several other former clients where they switched over. Make sure that whoever you go with, under their contract, that they're required to keep the software up to date for all of the latest FLSA rules. Make sure that their product is public sector compliant, you know, to allow for things like comp time and so forth. And it's very useful in these systems if you're going to like try to go with one system. One of the things that's important to track are things like worker comp leave and FMLA leave. And so, as we know, if someone takes sick or vacation, that could be just general sick or vacation, but it also could be FMLA sick or FMLA vacation. It's very useful if you get into a claim or a suit to be able to just pull from that system here's how many FMLA days they had or whatnot. And so these may already be doing that, but you just want to make sure that you get those features into your system.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a quick comment. I may be in the minority here because I hate time clocks. I think that it takes away the human element of this. And I understand why we use them, but in a situation like this, sometimes technology kicks us in the butt because there's going to be times when an employee's working where they're not keeping track of their time, and they will go overtime, but they haven't even asked their supervisor, or they haven't filed the report to go overtime, and it would be on the supervisor's advisory. I don't know if we can, I'm assuming you can't manually change these things, because that would be, can you manually? Okay, all right, yeah, I mean, I would think that if you're putting your finger on something, it's going to be locked in for good. I didn't think you were able to manually change it. Yeah, I mean, it just, like I said, I mean, I get it. I get why certain employees should be on it, and if we're going to make everybody do it, then we make everybody do it. I'm fine with that. I just, technology can kind of be a pain in the butt sometimes when you look at this, and I think it kind of can take away the human element of somebody working an extra 5 hours and say, okay, well, we'll take it off next week. And I know nobody wants to do the wink, wink, nod, nod thing, but I got to be honest with you. It happens in every organization in the country, and it usually works pretty well, and it actually builds a good rapport between management and the employees. But I'll leave it there.
I just wanted to clarify one thing. The way the federal law is with the number of hours within your work week is where they can flex their time within that work week. Even though we're in a 2-week pay period, the time would have to be within that particular work week for hourly employees. Salaried employees, it's not spelled out. Am I correct in that, Rob?
Well, from what I've seen, it looks like everybody's on board with pursuing this. Public comment?
Good morning, Pete Capusta, 399 150th Avenue. Kind of hard to...
The clerk, please set the time.
Is there a 3-minute limit?
Yeah, this is
Yes.
a meeting. Yeah.
So employee time tracking and policy issue violations were originally brought to the attention of City Manager Daniels the first week he started. So I want to thank the board for finally looking into the policies and enforcement of them. Through a series of public record requests, one example of the type of violation that can happen that needs to be considered as well is there's been an hourly employee, so thank you for pointing out that there's a difference between hourly and salaried. There was at least one hourly employee that was allowed to frequently work from home for a number of months, and timesheets confirmed that the hours worked were submitted as sweat time, hours worked, not administrative leave or otherwise. But an analysis of emails for those time periods of work from home shows no work. And the director of the department confirmed that there is no work product that he can provide that was done during those times. So we're not talking 10 minutes here and there. We're talking hundreds of hours to the tune of, $10,000 of paid time that maybe shouldn't have been because of this type of violation. So this information was provided to City Manager Daniels. I don't think it ever went anywhere. It wasn't followed up on, and the issue was ignored. So having consistent policy enforcement, having consistent policies documented explicitly and followed are a key of equitable employment for a city. So, and lack of consistent policy enforcement is a fraudulent waste of taxpayer funds, is what this boils down to. So, I greatly appreciate the board for demanding answers and accountability. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully that won't be happening again.
So if there's no other discussion on this topic, we'll move on to firings and forced resignations.
Mr. Mayor, before we move forward,
Okay.
these are some pretty sensitive issues. So if I may, I'd actually like to make a comment on the overall city of Madeira Beach. We kind of skipped by that and went right to the items of concern. Can I just make a quick comment? It's basically based on all the things coming up here going forward, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. I'd actually just like to make one thing perfectly clear. These issues are not an attack on Karen or the HR department, okay? If you believe like I do, our employees are the most valuable asset we have here, and that's why I hold this Civil Service Board in such high esteem. There are going to be some things probably said today that are going to make some people uncomfortable, so I'll apologize for that now. But the theory is simple. If you don't want to feel uncomfortable, then follow the rules, right? In fairness, the people that fell victim to these abuses that we're going to talk about, or who lost their jobs, or families suffered hardships, or lost their benefits, are the ones we should be showing real compassion for, not the perpetrators, okay? The real key to this exercise, though, forget about all that for the moment. The key to the exercise is our handbook and our charter don't match up in some spots, okay? We've seen this numerous times where somebody will bring up something and it comes out that, oh, well, I looked at the charter, I looked at the handbook, I looked at here. We've got to clean that up, and I know you guys tried to do that before, and I apologize to you so badly because I don't think you really had good counsel. I'm going to be as blatantly honest with you as I possibly can. I think there were some agenda-driven items that got into this handbook that don't belong to be here. So I do apologize for you, but I think we're going to have to bring you back to work here a little bit. I don't think it's as daunting a task as what I come across with. You know, when I was looking through the new employee handbook, I kind of got caught up in a couple of things. There's a lot of nuanced little word changes that I didn't catch the first time through. I mean, meaning that the first time that was presented to the board, there was an entire section of discipline that was ripped out by the former city manager. That was easy to catch. But a word added here, a word added there, can really make a lot of difference, and I think that that's something that has to be addressed. And and one of the major examples is the insertion of the word classified, okay? One thing we need to learn today is, you know, our rank and file are protected. So anybody below director level gets due process, has rights. The city manager, if we were to fire the city manager, he would have a hearing in order to be fired. But any department head is basically on an island by themselves. And, you know, to me, that is really crazy because these are the doers of our organization, okay? These are the ones that are out there really making things happen. They're not they're out there either getting their hands dirty, working, and we leave them really with nothing. They can be fired on the spot with no reason, no rhyme or reason behind it. And I think, you know, once we look at this and go through this again, you know, we're either got to do we're just talking about time clocks where either everybody's got to do it or nobody's got to do it. I don't really see a reason why directors, the middle level, I mean, your bread and butter people should be left out when the city manager and the city attorney has a contract, and even our new city finance director, city treasurer has a contract, and then everybody below the level of director level has protection as well. So either we protect them all or we don't protect any of them, and I think that's something we really got to talk about. The next thing really quick. Contrary to popular belief, I'm actually here to defend Karen. I think that, you know, in most of these cases, our HR coordinators put in a really impossible position of having to resolve conflict between her boss and a colleague, okay? I don't care where you sit on the issue. It's impossible for her to do that in whatever direction that Karen or whoever the HR person is at the time, whatever direction they provide, the city manager can just poo-poo it and they have final say. And I think what we've learned is they're never going to admit that they're wrong or give themselves a penalty. And Grace and Paul and Mr. Mayor can when they sat on this board, they can do this. It's definitely a flawed system because nobody's above the law, okay? And I've said this ad nauseum, and this isn't directed specifically at Bob, but the city manager in our system has way too much unchecked power, okay? And I think it's time to start checking. Our HR department needs to be run by the book, not politicized and be subject to bullying, okay? But again, the city charter and the handbook need to be followed or we wouldn't be here. And then I hear a comment the other day like, well, Crawford never followed the handbook either. And, you know, that doesn't really fly with me. And I urge you, everybody, to be careful what you say about Mr. Crawford and his settlement agreement, meaning Us as a city, we're not entitled to speak disparagingly about him. But while Shane was not perfect, and I worked for him, and I'm the first one to say that, he did pay the harshest penalty you can pay for any perceived wrongdoings. But to date, I don't know of one labor issue Shane had, or it's even accused of or being pending. And the same can't be said about the 3 city managers that followed him. Okay? These are just facts. So it kind of leads us to our task. And my personal opinion, now that, I kind of mentioned this earlier, now that we have skilled, agenda-free attorneys to help us, I think a lot of the key sections of the handbook need to be revised again. I mean, case in point, and I'm going to pick on you for a second, Mr. Tilka. Mr. Tilka's asked the question numerous times, is this an at-will city? And how many answers have you gotten? A dozen different ones, right? And I mean, and you know, Karen and I had the conversation the other day, and Karen said, yeah, we are an at-will city. But you know, in these meetings, our city labor attorney, Tom Gonzalez, on September 10th, 2018, right from the meeting notes, we are not an at-will city. Ralph Brooks, the guy we paid $7,000 a month to be our city council, August 20th, 2018, civil service meeting, private companies are at-will, government entities are not. Therefore, we are not an at-will city, okay? So while it's clearly written, you know, that we're not supposed to be involved in the day-to-day operations here, guys, it's most certainly our job to provide HR with a working system that is not subject to controversy, or we are going, you know, we've been lucky up to this point, and I think our attorneys on the end of the bench here can say, one sympathetic witness or one, you know, compassionate jury, and we're talking about and a pattern of doing things the wrong way, we could be talking about something pretty huge here. So I want to make sure we take politics out of this, and I want to make sure that we're doing things the right way. But this starts from working off the same sheet of music, and we're just not doing that. We're just not doing that. So again, I think we got to task ourselves with going back and marrying our charter and marrying our handbook so that we don't have these issues anymore. Because, you know, everything we're going to talk about here is going to be, in here it said this, and here it said this. No, we can't operate like that as a city, and I think, you know, it's time that we really do a scrubbing of this. Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Go on.
No, that's fine. I think we do need to go over it again. I know I've been looking through. There are a number of things that I have highlighted that I want to discuss, and I'm sure each of the commissioners and maybe even each of the civil service commissioners want to bring back up. Probably our best thing to do going forward is just to start go over the highlights of what we want to discuss. We put in our words about them, and maybe have the civil service get back together, discuss these issues, and get back with us on changes. Mr. City Manager, can you give me some guidance on that, on what you...
Yes, and actually our Assistant City Attorney, Rob, has gone ahead and we've had some email interaction. This is the first time we actually got a chance to meet, but we had some email interaction in reference to the actual, policy or personnel policies and procedures that we have. And I believe it was about 200 to 240 hours of work, or can you clarify that for me? You got to turn your mic on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I anticipated 20 hours.
Figures I had that way off. I apologize.
200 hours is huge. And that would depend on, if I'm going to multiple meetings and so on and so forth. But
Could you please put your mic closer?
Is that okay? Okay. Not knowing who wrote this or what the history of it is, I say with as much respect as I can that this is a very, very, very bad personnel policy. It is duplicative, inconsistent, spelling errors, punctuation errors. It makes a statement of city liability that is absolutely not the law and puts liability on the city where the city shouldn't have any liability. My recommendation to you, and it's up to y'all, this is too poor of a product to try to do strike through and underline, and I really would like permission to just come back, work with the manager, and come back with a clean slate policy. Y'all will tell me, and I've heard some of your discussion today already, overall what you want in terms of a policy, how things should be. Like salaried people should keep track of their time, but just the nuts and bolts of how this can even be understood by the average worker, how it could be applied by your HR professionals, how courts will read it. I mean, if I had to go to court on this right now, it would be kind of embarrassing to have to try to explain to the judge that, this is a well thought out, policy. So I think that rather than try to revise this, I think it would take way more time to try to do a strike through and underline it. Is just let me come back with something that, and there's a lot of things that aren't even in here that a good, solid personnel policy should have, that address things that don't come up often, but when they come up, it's very helpful to have a policy to say, here's what it is, like layoffs.
Retaliation. There's no retaliation policy.
Yeah, there's nothing, even speaking to retaliation. When you have layoffs and furloughs, it's nice to just have something in the policy, because if you come to that fiscal crisis or whatever, like local governments did some years ago, it takes the politics out of it and the why are you doing this to me, because this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to do that in good times, and so then if a bad time comes. So anyway, I put that out to you. Our firm won't act unless so directed, but that would be my recommendations, rather than try to fiddle with the edges, that we just come back with a completely new policy. If I could speak very quickly to the issue of at will, not at will, that each state is allowed to adopt its own employment rules. And in the Florida Constitution, it is clearly spelled out that Florida is an at-will state. You have the right to unionize if you want to, whether you're public sector or private sector, but you don't have to, and otherwise you are at will. The United States Supreme Court ruled in Cleveland versus Loudermill that public employees also have no protected property interest in their public employment unless the local government or any government adopts rules that give them a property interest. And so your typical civil service system that cities and counties have in Florida, where you cannot be discharged except for just cause, and that you have some appeal right, be it to a civil service board or a hearing officer, that gives you a constitutionally protected interest. But not all public employees in those given organizations need to have that. And so what the model that I am used to and recommend, which does differ somewhat from the vice mayors, and again, you all make the policy, but I'll just give you my explanation, is that the folks that are the management team, which are typically the county administrator, the city manager, the department directors, and the division managers, if you're big enough, and I really don't know this organization enough to know if you have divisions, those people are at will. You leave them, those are folks that remain at the will and pleasure of the head of the government, being the city manager or the county administrator. Why you do that, or why I recommend that you do that, is because those folks are charged with creating and implementing the policy, not your overall ordinances and stuff, but once you all have set the big rules, how does my department run? How am I going to bring to bear the city's recreational resources or whatnot? How am I going to schedule my employees? How am I going to hire and fire? All that stuff. To say that those folks are going to get to have a post-termination hearing where we have to come and air the dirty laundry, when it might not be that they did something that is a violation of a felony or whatnot, but if whoever you pick as your city manager says, I want this to go this way, our commissioner said go this way, and the department head is just not going that way, there really shouldn't have to be a argument about it. Instead, and some of you have private sector experience, the boss just gets to say, I need to make a change here. Nothing personal, you just aren't fitting with this organization. So you can go either way, but it just, if you do subject higher-level folks to a civil service system and give them civil service rights, that can create more complexity than you need. And of course, if you don't do it the right way and they don't agree with it, now they're going to be suing you for a violation of due process and so forth, whereas otherwise they would have never had that opportunity.
No, Rob, I think we totally agree. I think, you know, as I've said, either all or none, so we got to figure out how we do that. So if we're going to say the directors are at will, then the city manager then is at will, right?
Right.
And then below that, they can have a, the civil service board can be for anybody below director level. What I was saying is, the craziness of this is we left out one group of people, and above them and below them, you're okay. So somebody working from the bottom gets himself to director level, all of a sudden he gets fired the day he gets to the director level, he has no recourse or anything like that.
And with your city manager, that's totally a function of your contract.
Right.
And I'm not privy to it, I haven't reviewed it. You know, and certainly with our firm, lawyers don't have the right to pick their client, the client picks the lawyer. So if tomorrow you want to pick somebody else as your lawyer, you can.
Yeah, because you know, if we do go the way you're saying, if we were going to just wipe it out and be at will across the board, you're going to have a lot of work to do, because the beginning statement of our policy handbook, discipline should be corrective rather than punitive. If we're just going to be at will, we're going to have to change that completely. If somebody can just get fired for looking the wrong way.
Yeah,
I mean, it's...
I don't think that's what he's saying.
No, I understand what he's saying. I'm just saying, if we were going to do all at will or all not at will, we would have to make changes.
That's not what he's saying.
Commissioner, I understand what he's saying. What I said initially was either all or nothing, but I understand that. So anybody below level, we can keep the policies that we have in place. Anybody above director level, we've got to make the changes that we got to make. I'm totally okay with that. Totally okay with that.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, getting back to your question, I would recommend following the path that our legal counsel, giving them an opportunity to come back instead of going line by line, because this does need some updating. There are a lot of things that are missing that other municipalities and governments have within their structure that I think is important that we need. And so my recommendation would be to follow our legal counsel's advice.
I think we do need to at least voice to him what we feel needs.
Oh, yeah, no, I totally agree.
And-
But
and
I think there's a
obviously-
lot that we need to put into the document that's not there, and then there's some things that we need to look at removal. I think what Rob's saying is he's going to come back and give you the flip side of different things, and then, you know, that document would kind of be your starting point, because he wants to make sure he covers all.
Well, we've already looked at this one and detailed it, you know.
Okay.
I don't want him to go back and recreate the wheel when I've already gone through and said, the very first sentence says section 6.6 of the city charter. We don't even have a section 6.6. Now, why do I want to pay him to find that out?
No, that makes sense.
I can tell him this, you know, I mean,
No,
that's what I'm saying.
the process and how we get
I
there
wouldn't
is...
have spent, you know, hours and hours looking at this if I knew we were just going to not express what we thought was wrong. And I don't mean to go on and on about it, but there are some things, like I just said. The very first sentence has an error. You know, I mean, so if we can point those out and get him on that track to, you know, write a better track, then it would be probably make more sense for everybody.
I agree.
You know?
Well, first, as a former member of Civil Service Commission, it's refreshing to have a labor attorney here that's actually giving us some advice. And I like that idea of going through it. Let's do it right. If we're going to do this again, let's do it right, so we don't have these conflicts and so that we get these things out. Commissioner Price, you are a retired labor attorney. I would like to see all of us get bullet points together of things we would like in the handbook to give to the labor attorney, and let him go from there and get back with us. And if anyone on the Civil Service Commission has input that they would like to put down also, let's get together. Let's get these bullet points together and have Mr. Eichenfelder get back to us with a revised handbook, and then we can go over it. And that's my opinion. But that's, it's open for discussion.
I agree.
Well, I've already done it. I did that in preparation for this meeting. So,
I knew you would, Happy.
Well,
Thank goodness for you.
Isn't that why we get
Really.
these in advance?
Yeah.
So we have something to say. I mean, but our charter says it's the Civil Service Commission that sets the policy. I mean, we can obviously say, hey, there's some things wrong here, and certainly listen to the attorney, but it's these folks that are supposed to be doing the work, unfortunately for you.
Well, yeah.
We're here to help or offer suggestions. Obviously, Bob has to live by it. So, but we're going to be, that's the job of y'all, but.
Well, that's why I say, we need input from the Civil Service Commission also, and this handbook probably should go back to the Civil Service Commission once it has been revised by Mr. Eichenfelder. So, yes, sir, Bob.
Robert Preston, 425 South Bay Shore Drive, Madeira Beach. Oh, I'm not supposed to do that. I think it's really good that we have a labor attorney here to look at this. I think it's really, really important. One of the reasons that I wanted to get on the Civil Service Commission was because of the inequities that I saw within the city and personnel. It just didn't seem proper. And not following whatever we had, we weren't following. So I know that Commissioner Price probably spent hours working on this handbook.
Just going through and saying this is a concern, this isn't true,
Correct.
This is redundant.
So it very well, because you have a labor attorney and you have a labor attorney, there's two of them. They could knock heads together in a room by themselves and probably come up with something really, really good prior to bringing it back to the commission as a whole. And if you look at the Civil Service Commission, I'm a retired worker. I don't know the background of the other three people, but we definitely don't have the expertise or the time or the resources to define law.
Yeah.
It's something that we just, what we think or whatever the case may be. And no matter what we say or what we put on that piece of paper, there will be challenges. If it's clean and legal, there'll be less challenges, but there still will be challenges eventually to the policy if somebody feels that they were wronged. So it's really important to clean it up. I look at one of the things that stuck out in my mind about the personnel policy is the city had more than one place for personnel records in many cases. My understanding is there's only supposed to be one place where personnel records are held. and that's probably with the HR department. The finance department shouldn't have one. The public works department shouldn't have one. So when people go and they look for their documentations as a worker, they can find it in one place. They don't have to go to multiple places.
The law says you have to keep workers' comp, FMLA, some benefit information separate from the personnel file. Just let you know. The law, federal law.
But that's held in one place.
Not necessarily. I mean, most people do, most companies, now I'm private sector, so I'm not end all be all. In fact, I'd probably be a lot more meaner than this gentleman would.
I agree with that.
But, yeah. But I'm just saying, personnel files have, you have to separate some information. I think some immigration stuff has to be separate too. So conceivably, there's 3 places for employee files to be.
Well, there are certain files that are separately, that are required to be separately maintained. For instance, medical records, so forth. They can all be in HR's building, and so sometimes the public employer will have an employee's file, and then there will be a blue folder with the main stuff. There will be a red folder with the immigration stuff. There will be a green folder with the medical records, but it's all touchable. It's separated out in the sub-files, if you will, so that people know, if there's a records request that comes in, what can be given, what cannot be given. There are different ways to do it.
And I totally understand that, but it's one place.
Yeah, what you may be talking about is things called departmental files, and so that's largely a function of what your city manager wants. There are 2 things to think about with departmental files. First of all, they're informal. They're not the official file. Sometimes if you are a manager, a director, or whatnot, and you have to give an annual evaluation to your subordinate every year, it's helpful to have something that's there, for your desk reference to say, okay, what has Tommy done this past year? Let me pull out the commendations. Let me pull out the note file that I did that said, you shouldn't have done that this day, last February, so that I can have a helpful reminder. Keeping that kind of thing is not illegal. It creates a public records issue, because if someone comes in and says, I demand all files related to so-and-so, now you've got the official file, plus you've also got this stuff that could be less formal, that could have handwritten notes from the boss that are, too casual, or maybe say stuff in the way they shouldn't be said, which then creates an issue for me in litigation if I have to explain, why the boss said, this old guy screwed up again, or something like that. So you have to be cautious with that, and that's why I think good training, from the HR folks, that when you train your managers and your directors about how to be good evaluators and what to do, you explain to them that, look, if you're going to choose to keep this informal reminder to yourself about, these things, exercise professionalism and caution. Did that answer your?
Kind of like, pretty much, but, I've looked at some of these evaluations, and, I'm kind of used to things where, does not meet, meets, exceeds, something that's defined, and then when they get their evaluation, it has these things in it that state, this is the reason you don't exceed. And then the other side of that coin is, I don't see a defined work improvement program for the city for employees that does not meet.
Mm-hmm.
And if an employee is terminated and there was no work improvement program, How's he know what he's not supposed to do or supposed to do? You know, so those are kind of the things that I don't see really defined in here as well as it should be. And those criteria need to be the same throughout the city for those type of programs and those evaluations and stuff like that. It shouldn't be a different evaluation for the finance departments than it is for they're different jobs.
Yeah, you have to,
Yeah, they're different jobs. They have different criteria on what they're supposed to do. But the process is the same. It's not different. It should be the same. So, and I just kind of look at, you know, the people here aren't attorneys. We're just people. And I think that's where it makes a difference. You know, and I just, something that just came into my mind. So let's say you have a garbage truck driver, and he gets a DUI. He can no longer drive the truck. There's 3 guys on it now, I know, or whatever at times. So one of the others can drive it. But if the person's job requires them to drive, what is the stated policy in there? Is he laid off without pay until he can do his job again? Is he fired? What was the deal? But this is something that's off of city property.
I think it's pretty standard that if at any time you cannot perform an essential function of your job, you lose that job. I mean, we should not, in fact, be taking employees that all of a sudden can't do a key part of their job and figuring out a way to pigeonhole them somewhere else. That DUI is never going away. Our insurance will not allow any driver to have a DUI. I mean, I'm assuming.
I think your point is that it's best stated, and ironically, that's one of the many things in the rules that I would want to bring back to the city for consideration is I have good language on loss of a required license, and it goes through if your position requires some license or certification, and you lose that license or certification, here's what happens. You've got so much time to get it back. You could be on unpaid administrative leave until then, unless we of our own will say that we got something else for you to do. If you don't get it back within a period of time, you'll be separated because... Yeah,
and that's just kind of the things that when I'm going through this policy, I don't see a whole lot of this stuff that's defined. And I think it's very obvious with the comments that our attorney made.
I say, you know, it's probably for time efficiency standpoint, rather than try to do a red line of this, is just bring back a clean policy. Mayor, maybe, you know, let's let the manager and I get that to the Civil Service Commission as a first layer. They review it, they ask any questions, make any recommendations for changes, and then once they're satisfied, then we bring it back to you guys and have another meeting like that.
I like that idea a whole lot. Thank you.
I do too.
I'll just give you this because I've kind of taken my notes and made them legible. Because there's just detailed things that you shouldn't have to be going back to the charter to see it. Is this what the charter says? Because it's not, or whatever. So, okay.
I would like to make a comment.
Yes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So about 3 years ago, we were commissioned by the last commission to look at the policy handbook that had not been looked at for many years. So we, as a group, went through tediously every article, every section, to try to come up with a handbook to give it to the city manager for their review. And yes, we were hampered because we didn't have a labor attorney to guide us. And once in a while, the labor attorney would show up. Karen, the HR manager, did the best she can to help us through it. But so you have this product that was given to the city manager to review and come back and publish it. So what the attorney is saying to give us a whole new policy handbook would probably be the best thing to do, because to take this again and to go back and review it again as the mayor knows that we were on the same committee when he was a member, it was a lot of work. And we did what we knew what to do and did the best we could to get through to the city manager, the last city manager to review. But we really didn't have a lot of communication feedback. So this is the product, it was approved, and we went forward. So now we're coming back again to look at it. To look at it again for us is just not worth it. We can give them comments to the attorney to look at it, but we need a clean product to start from scratch one and go from there. So anyway, that's my feedback to now. You know, we have members that were here 2 years ago, that are not members any longer. So we have a new panel as well. So we may have better, more eyes on it, new blood, and so to create a better product for the city manager to review, for their employees to take back with them, and be able to live with it. So, thank you.
Well, Grace, I agree with everything you said. We had very little guidance, and in fact, when our finished product went to the city manager, there were items that we had in the handbook that were actually stripped out and sent to the city commission for approval without our knowledge, and that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen this time. That wasn't right for us to have to go back through it again after something was caught. But I'd like to see us do that. And what I'd like to see each of us do is to make not a long list, doesn't have to be in detail, but make bullet points, email them to the city clerk, each of us, the Civil Service Commission and the Board of Commissioners, get them to the city clerk and let them be forwarded to Mr. Eschenfelder to take into consideration when he goes through the book and do our handbook and get back to us for review. Get it back to the Civil Service Commission for review, and maybe Commissioner Price, you could be a liaison with him, because I know you know your stuff, and we're lucky to have you here now.
Thank you.
So maybe you can work with him on getting this accomplished for the commission,
Copy of these notes.
and get back to the Civil Service Commission and get back to the Board of Commissioners on a product that you think is good for the city, good for the employees, and keeps us out of trouble.
And Mayor, if I could just very quickly, so that we don't ruin it all by violating the sunshine, remind the Civil Service Commissioners that when you send that to the clerk, don't copy your fellow members, just you send it to the clerk so nobody else knows what you're sending.
And if I could just say, the value that I see in the Civil Service Commission, and what I would think your roles would really be the most needed, is as a fairness check on how the city is treating its employees. And I think that's where your value comes in as lay people, right? Because you can sit there and listen to somebody talk about their grievance and everything, and then as just a human being, you're going to get a gut feeling, well, is this fair or is it not fair? Did this person get fair warning on the issues that they got terminated for, or without pay, or whatever like that? So I think that's where the real value of the commission is in grievances, and just being able, someone, with an employee that starts that process. You guys are the gatekeepers in the how we like to think here in Madeira Beach. So not necessarily writing down handbooks that can get us in trouble in front of a judge. So if everyone agrees with that, we may want to just make that slight change in our ordinances, and not make it their burden to draft our policies. I mean, that is overwhelming for people. I don't know how. I mean, it might have been good 20 years ago, but I don't think it's current.
I think you'd have to pull it out of your charter. So it's a bit of.
It says it in the charter. I know it says it in the ordinance, but
Yeah, it's in the charter,
it's in the
too.
charter?
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, that's not usually a function that you give to a citizen board, is
Yeah.
to develop that kind of detailed policy, but that's a fish to fry another day, I think,
Yeah.
of what the charter says. For now, we have to, the policy that we're going to have is going to have to honor the charter, because
Right.
it's the charter, right? It's the
Right.
superior document to the city, and, but moving forward, the next time you all do some charter amendments to put forward to your citizens, that might be one of them, is to modernize the role of the CRC.
Commissioner Price, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I used to be on this board too, years ago, and, their role in the city is important. Our problem isn't really their role. Our problem is the fact that their decisions aren't, we've got a real sticky situation when their decisions are not, or have to be approved by somebody that the decision could be against. So we've really got to work through that part of the issue, because, putting unchecked power on a city manager to decide whether or not he did something wrong is pretty daunting. And the reason, and we can, and I'm sure that's probably which way the mayor's going. We can, these topics, the rest of these topics, the only reason I brought them up today was to show a pattern. We don't have to go through them. I wasn't here to embarrass anybody. But the bottom line, you can put together the best handbook in the world. If it's blatantly not followed or followed inconsistently, it's not worth the paper it's written on. One of the most important things, and I had a private conversation with somebody off the record, and they said the morale at the city right now is as low as it's ever been. And I didn't answer the question at the time because I wanted to think about it a little bit, but I know the person who I was talking to is watching this now. So my answer is pretty simple. The morale in the city has been low for years. Okay, it certainly didn't start with this commission, but I'll assure every staff member that's watching this right now, and I don't ever speak for the board as a whole, but I will on this case, I don't think you'll find a more labor-friendly board anywhere than this one. I think you've seen, number one, we're making great strides right here. I mean, we're scrapping a handbook that doesn't work, and we're at some point probably going to have to go to the voters and probably move some things in the charter, but that's the major concern right now, to take care of our employees. They're the greatest asset that we have. But I think, morale's a reflection of leadership, and the one thing that's gone on in this city, and way too long, is we've seen significant changes in upper level management. If you don't believe me, just think about something for a second. In a little over 3 years, every single department in this city has changed leadership, except for one. Every 3 years. I'm not talking, people used to stay here 15, 20 years. One department, and that was Frank DeSantis. And the funny thing about that was the first department that the former board was going to get rid of right away. But Frank's the only guy that's been here in a managerial role for over 3 years. You can't build continuity that way. You can't build a team. You can't build morale that way. You can't treat certain employees one way and other employees another way and expect everybody to know exactly what they're supposed to be doing and not be as scared for their job. Did I say as scared? Holy crow. Wow, I'm tired. I was up at 3 a.m. unloading a truck at the store. Scared for their job, okay? So my point is, if we're going to do this and we're going to go through these things, we have got to figure out the other side of that coin. This commission needs teeth, okay? That if they hear a case and they want to change it and they unanimously decide to, they can't hand it off to the city manager and say, nah, I don't like that idea. Let's go another way. They should be able to appeal to us, who are their bosses, in order to make a decision and render a decision on that. I think that would be a really good suggestion to just get started. But those are my feelings on it. We don't, like I said, I didn't put these things, let's just say for the record, we haven't been following procedure, okay? We haven't on in any way. We've gotten better, a little better, but we haven't been following procedure. The next set of rules that comes up, we have got to make sure that we're on top of everybody, that these things, that this is the system of checks and balances that are in place, because it's a reflection on us. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Hey, just like our conversation when I first got here and we had a grievance that we were dealing with, I like the fact that there's oversight over the manager. I really do. And if you all sit down, we haven't had a grievance but if we have a grievance and you all look at things differently than maybe I did, I want what's best for every employee that's here. So if I looked at something a little bit differently and you don't see it the same way, I don't take that as a personal affront. I think it's quality control. And I think that's so important in any organization to have that. Grace, you're the chairperson, and if we do have a grievance while I'm here, and I plan to be here a long time, so, you have my word that I'm going to take that feedback from you instead of just saying, hey, I'm the manager, and, whatever I say goes, because I think that's very important.
Well, considering that we take our time in looking at it and in a different angle than you do, and a different perspective, and then just to provide it to the city manager for his review, but not to get any feedback to provide to us why that decision is compromised or disagreed with, and it's sort of like, why are we wasting our time? I don't really need to be going through this if your decision is going to come up with, well, this is what stands, and not really consider what we have input to. So, well,
that's why I appreciate the feedback, and there is value behind that.
Right.
So
that's what
I don't know what's happened in the past.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm just speaking where we are today and where we are tomorrow, and I think that's ultra important. The time and effort that you all put in, even in I was at the very tail end of the handbook, and just all that work and the hours that you all put in, I just think is a testament to how thorough you are in all of the processes you go through.
Well, thank you. Thank you, because we tried to do the best job we have the ability to do. Thank you.
So I'm wondering if we should also take possible bullet points down to the director level, see if there are directors that may have things they're interested in that may be suitable for their own department, but not necessarily other departments in the city. Not necessarily that they will be used, but they may have some good input for us. And does the Civil Service Commission want to get together as their own group and just discuss and come up with a bullet point list so that we don't have 5 different emails, or how would y'all like to handle this as a group?
I feel that's fine. How would
I think that it's much easier to think about it.
Sorry, Bob.
Personally, I would like some time to think about it, and just shoot the email to Clara. She'll define, there'll be categories that all these fit in this one category, or all these fit in that one category. I was thinking about the Civil Service Commission, and hearing these grievances, and this is the same thing that I'm leading into giving the comments to Clara about. And when you go to court and you have let's say the state Supreme Court or whatever the case may be, you have dissenting arguments and you have arguments for 4. So you might have a 3-2 or something like that. So that's where you get in differences. You may be overrun by 3 people over 2. That's the democratic process. I understand that. But with the Civil Service Commission and they're hearing these grievances, I would think that you would want them to provide, if there's a dissenting argument, one way or the other, that's half the majority, or a little under half the majority or something like that, that the city manager might like to hear both of those rather than just one. So I'm just kind of getting at that. So I would much rather give the comments to Clara. She can divvy them up, and if these four are the same, it's going to happen with you as well. They'll be the same, roughly the comment, maybe in a different words. Thank you.
Is the rest of the Civil Service Commission, is that okay with you folks?
So the time limit that we haven't discussed that, to provide this to the attorney to get another handbook back, a policy handbook, is, what are we looking at?
Probably about 5 o'clock this afternoon.
Okay. Thank you.
If I may, you all are the ones giving us the feedback, so I as much as we want to get this thing moving, I think, you know, like Bob said, that you might have to sit back and reflect on some of this. So my suggestion would be, what time frame do you all as a group want to do it? Even if you do it individually, but, you know, do you want 30 days? Do you want, you know?
I don't want to spin our wheels and do things if it's not legal or if it's not going to make sense, if we've already done that. So I think it should go to the lawyer and then back to us, or to you all, however you want to do it that way. But, I mean, we can send in points, but we don't know if it's right or wrong. We've done this. John, we've done this. We put it in. It was approved. You know, it's better than what it was. I think we were trying to react to certain things going on in the city and things that weren't in the policy, and we did that. So,
and that was kind of what my proposal was, let me just put together, you know, I've heard a lot of discussion, I think I know where y'all want to go with things, let me put it together, get it back to you guys read it and digest it, and then it would be most helpful for you.
We look at it as, you know, in layman's terms, you know,
Yeah.
does it make sense? Can we understand it? You know, does it need to be changed? Will an hourly employee understand it? So that's the route I would go. And then, you know, then we can sit down and look at it. But I don't want to waste, you know, all our time having a meeting and doing that.
Makes sense.
Completely agree with that.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Hey, Grace?
I feel that if we're all in consensus with that, then let's just, if we have our own bullets that we want to send to Clara, we'll do that. And then we'll just go forward and wait for the attorney to provide us a clean handbook and to review.
And Grace, probably your timeline, you might want to consider, you could change it if you want to. You have all set your next meeting for the first week in November?
Yeah, it's not until November.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit
far
off. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
it's easy enough to bump it up from there if we need to go
Yeah.
over this, you know. That's fine with me too. Is that okay? We got a consensus with the Board of Commissioners? Okay. Can you give us a time frame on when you can get back with us on this? Is 5 p.m. this afternoon good with you also?
Microphone.
Microphone.
Sorry.
I think reasonably 2 weeks, I'll have a draft, and what I'll do is I'll put together the draft, and then I'll do a cover memo that sort of goes over just here are the bullet points of some of the main things that is going to be added that you don't have. Here are some of the things that I pulled out because they shouldn't be in there, and then then that's what the CRC can review and focus in on those policy things. You know, they don't need to futz around with, you know, federal regulation, whatever, because it is what it is. It has to be said. Okay.
So 2 weeks from you, and then another, well, this is the 4th, so hopefully we can get back together in September, give you folks time to review it, give us time to review it.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Is that fine with everybody on the commission? How about up here? Is that good with everybody? We'll have a meeting, go over the handbook again, and then,
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just keep in mind, there's a lot going on in September. So, you know, I try to pace out meetings for you, but we do have the budget stuff that we'll be working on too.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Well, that's what I love about making 17 cents an hour. So. Okay, is there any other public comment on this before we adjourn?
I do have a couple issues to go over after you do the public comment.
Okay.
I have one comment. It's not public comment, but I think it's important that we have a SHRM-certified HR professional. If people are being treated differently, we need to have somebody who's been trained on how to go around that person and go to the civil service people and say, I'm under pressure because of this, or come to us and say, I'm under pressure because of this. Every HR person knows, and Karen knows this, you treat everybody the same, right? That's how you avoid any discrimination claims. That's how you follow the handbook and you treat everyone the same. If that's not happening, we need an HR person that is going to stand up and say it. So in my opinion, we need a certified HR person here. One is all we need. And we have one, I mean, we have an HR person now. I don't know, I understand you do work for finance and work for HR, and I don't think that's wise. I think we need an HR person who's dedicated and who's been through the Society of Human Resource Management program, who knows how to do this stuff. So that's all.
I agree with you that it's very important to have somebody who's knowledgeable in HR. I am certified human resources, professional human resources with the Human Resources Institute, which is affiliated with SHRM. I don't know what else I can do other than just say that I do my best. I try to follow the rules. I treat everybody fairly, I think. I don't think I treat one person differently than another. As far as following the rules, whenever Bob asks me, what's it say in the handbook? I go to the handbook. That's what I follow. Public human resources is really different from private human resources because you all get to make different rules in the handbook that, you're allowed to do. So, so it's been a learning curve. Certainly, we're short-staffed. I know probably you all might not feel that way. When I came on 5 years ago, I was just in the finance department, and with, being able to take on a lot of responsibilities, a lot kept getting put on me, like more and more and more. I do a lot for the city, probably more than I should. And last year I told the previous city manager, he asked me, he said, well, do you want to do HR or do you want to do finance? Well, I said, I can do either one. I can do one really good or the other really good, but I can't do them both really, really good.
Right.
It's too much. I would love an assistant if I have to continue the way I am. I love finance. I like working with munis. I mean, I'm flexible to do whatever, and that's probably why a lot has been put on me, because I'm willing to do whatever I have to do. That's all I can say, but I am certified.
Okay, well, we need someone dedicated to this.
If I'm...
I mean, not dedicated as in putting their dedication. I mean, we need a dedicated employee to just do HR, because I can't see how some of this past stuff has happened without a strong HR person that, there's a fine line. You've got to defend you're working for the city, you want to do the best for the city, but you also have to do what's correct for the employee. And someone that's working in two completely different departments, I think that's too much for one person. I think we need someone in HR that's their job. HR, payroll, most organizations, the rule of thumb is one HR person for every 100 employees. And it's that first one that's so tough. When you get to be 100 employees, it's like, oh my God, I need another HR person, and then it kicks in. But I think part of the thing is we need someone who's going to raise an alarm when they see these things happening, who live, you live here or you work here, so you understand what's kind of going on. And I'm just saying maybe you're stretched too thin. There needs to be either A or B. I don't think we need a finance person who's doing HR on the side and getting extra things put on them from both departments. That's all. That's the point I was trying to make.
And that's, yeah, that's the way I feel.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to the budget. So what you guys are willing to provide for us as far as staff, that's what's really
Yep.
important. Who's doing what and how stretched are they?
Right.
I, as far as towing the line, I can only do so much because I report to the city manager. The city manager has final say in decisions. So, you know, I have to do what he tells me. But I know what you're saying as far as like report to maybe civil service or something if I don't agree with something. Sure.
Well, not that if you don't agree, it's if you see, if an employee is fudging their time clock, you need to take action. If he says no, then you go to them. I mean, this is, some of this stuff's black and white. You know, you're the protector of the employee and you're also the protector of the city. So it's a tough job being the HR coordinator or director, whatever we want to call you, coordinator, I guess. I mean, it's hard because, you know, you need to have the trust of both the employees without becoming a friend, and then you have to have the trust from your city manager to back you up when you make decisions. So I don't envy you at all. I often wondered how my clients were able to do what they did with all the different laws out there and everything. You know, I understand how you're going to be talking a lot to this guy, right? Like, this is happening to me. At a minimum, call him. Call Rob. I mean, if things are happening that you know in your heart of hearts, since you're a certified human resources professional, that somebody is telling you not to follow through with what you know is the law, you need to raise the alarm.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I've ever done anything that's not lawful. I mean, I don't think I've ever, you know, if there's something.
Maybe not you, but you've been here when others have.
Well,
I mean, because we experienced it.
Commissioner, yeah, you're hitting it. This was the same point I just made about the Civil Service Commission. They have no teeth, and she's a coordinator. So a coordinator will take a decision which can be negative against the city manager and hand it to them, and they go, we'll take it from here. They don't, you know, that's why we have to design a plan, and that where maybe, you know, the HR is on an island and reports to the city clerk maybe, or something like that, where they have direct access to us. We are leaving ourselves so wide open when suits against a certain individual are being determined by that individual. You can't do it. Can't do it. I've been making this point for 3.5 years. I had commissioners leave a meeting because I was making, I can't get involved. Yeah, this is our job. We got to be able to do that. I'm glad. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay.
Well, sometimes you have to tell your boss things he may not want to hear, and you've got to be the steward of doing what's right.
I do, and I know that.
And that's.
And we're going to put a whistleblower whistleblower protection in here, so.
Well,
like everybody needs to have that.
A good handbook for us. I really appreciate that idea because I actually said that to Bob a week or two ago. I said our handbook, it evolved from a collective bargaining unit type handbook because we used to be unionized and actually too, I do want to make the point that the fire department is unionized, and any changes that we make to our handbook, they need to be aware of. We have to communicate with them. I think we have a time limit too that we have to make sure that they're involved as well. So we should probably include our union rep from the fire department in any kind of changes, just so that they're aware. They don't, you know, they would have a grievance if we surprised them with anything, any changes.
Unfair labor practice is what it would be.
Right.
If I may, number one, just to clarify things, everything I do when it comes to personnel issues, I have Karen on board. And, you know, and the instruction is, even with my other personnel, even if it's a contrary message, I want to hear the message. You know, when you're a manager, you know, you can't get up in this lofty thing where, you know, it's my way or the highway or anything else. So every time I've had a meeting with an employee on a disciplinary issue, Karen has been there. When we've dealt with evaluations, the evaluations go through Karen first before they even come to me because I want her feedback on that. It's very important. But most importantly, your issue is her workload. And I spoke with our interim finance director in reference to that, and we both are the belief that payroll and benefits is a function of finance. HR is a separate function, and that's keeping track of making sure all of our personnel files are in order, our employees are getting that voice that they need, and also reassurance that I'm following the policies, the supervisors, the grievance procedure, all of that falls under an HR function. And, so that's what, Andrew and I are looking at as we finalize and tweak the budget, is to see how we can get that done as efficiently as we possibly can. Did I miss anything, Karen?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
No, we appreciate your work. Thank you. Just
Is there any other discussion?
And before you adjourn, or on that topic?
Yes.
Okay. Before you adjourn, again, the Civil Service Board deals with the benefits for the employees and so forth, and one of the biggest situations that we face with COVID is the fact that, we've got some revenue that we have to make up, and we need to be very conservative as we go into this next year. So the budget proposal that we have does not include any pay raises for our employees for this year. And I know it's an unfortunate thing, and I know that deals with morale as well, but we all have to be good stewards of what we're managing. And just for information's sake, for 1% of a salary increase for our employees would be $31,700 is what that costs. So you can see currently we're at 2% COLA is where we were this year, and I guess previous years, I believe. And then we started a merit system where they could earn up to 2% on a merit system. So the total exposure to the city for this current fiscal year that we're in is 4%. And being where we are with our budget and our revenues decreasing on the state side, the revenue sharing that we have, we're just trying to be very conservative. Obviously, if things change as we get into the fiscal year, I think the commission themselves are interested in our employees and doing something for them, but at this juncture, it's kind of hard for us to make that commitment. So I just wanted to mention that so we get your feedback, both as the commission and myself, because it's important to us.
which is a little shocking to me that you guys didn't want to raise the millage rate, not even the smallest bit.
We did.
Well, we did, but that wasn't a staff recommendation. I have to sit up here and argue for it, and I fully expect our employees to get a little bit of a raise. I can't believe we left that out, frankly. But
and we're not done with the process.
That's what I'm thinking.
That was me that voted against it, Happy.
We're at the beginning.
Clearly voted against it. I'm going to say my piece.
If I may, we're at the, we're dealing with the budget. The numbers are getting to the final part.
Right.
But we still are in that direction where, if this commission and then this commission decides that, hey, we want to do something, and give us some recommendations. But at this juncture, we're all making sacrifices, and that's kind of what we looked at. And just in fairness, where we're talking about the merit increase, I was here last year when the guarantee from the previous commission was made that we weren't going to raise the rate, so raise the millage rate. So I understand and I appreciate that because nobody planned on a pandemic, but I'm trying not to use that as an excuse either.
Okay, is there anything else? Okay, this meeting is adjourned.
Jeez, just in time. Hey, my meeting just ended. Can you give me about 5 or 10 minutes? I'll call you right back. Okay.